Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Let's try to wrap up our discussion of Libya and go on. We got a lot of U.S. domestic still to cover. Obama's masterpiece. I was looking the other day at Obama, the Postmodern Coup, The Making of a Manchurian Candidate, reviewing the Italian edition of that, which will shortly be available in bookshops in Italy. And I think one thing that's a merit of that book is it points to this idea that in the breakdown crisis of imperialism, Bush-Cheney represent one stage. Bush-Cheney really demand from most people nothing more than a passive assent. In other words, go out and buy things was the word from Bush and Cheney. Right? Keep the economy going, keep your consumer expenditures up, and vote for the neocons, Bush and Cheney. But now, as the crisis of imperialism deepens, what is demanded now is active engagement in the cause of barbarism. And that is what Obama has been able to deliver. In 2007, 2008, you had an anti-war movement in this country that was interested in the impeachment of Bush and Cheney over the Iraq war. The anti-war movement, the peace movement, was in a strong position. Today, Obama has successfully reversed that front, and Obama is now able to use the left liberal remnants of that anti-war movement in favor of imperialist aggression against Libya. And probably a good example is the Amy Goodman program, Democracy Now!, strongly supporting interventionism. You can essentially use this as a kind of litmus test. That is, people who are supporting an attack on Libya are strongly suspected of representing the left wing of the U.S. intelligence community, and many of them, that's what they were all along. Many of the eloquent voices against the war in Iraq were simply a cultural hatred of Bush and Cheney and a disagreement about imperialist methods. The group that has now come forward, Samantha Power, one of the policy directors of the National Security Council, Susan Rice, this venomous UN ambassador claiming to represent the United States, and in the background, Cass Sunstein, presumably the person inside the administration running the WikiLeaks phenomenon. We just got reports this week that Cass Sunstein, when he was an undergraduate, I believe, at Harvard, had a roommate who was one of the first of the hackers of the 70s and 80s, somebody who took the lead in hacking. So Cass Sunstein is somebody who's got an appreciation of hacking and what you can do with the Internet from very, very early on, right, from the early days of DARPANet and so forth. So these people, right, Samantha Power, having written her book about the need for humanitarian intervention to bomb Serbia, the problem from hell, with left cover and with the demagogy of human rights and humanitarian concerns, humanitarian intervention, which is the slogan of Kouchner of France. Of course, humanitarian intervention turns out to be when and where imperialism demands, as we saw, for example, in the Tamil Tiger case a couple of years ago. This is now what has reduced much of the left liberal community to babbling puppets of Obama, and you can see people, thanking Code Pink, thanking Democracy Now!, thanking other left liberals for their yeoman service in popularizing the idea that Gaddafi has to go. So I think this is a sign of the intellectual and moral bankruptcy of such strata. Let us also take a look now quickly. Bahrain, this is now moving very fast. This week in Bahrain, you had essentially the Gulf Cooperation Council, the GCC, of Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and some others there in the Gulf region, becoming the holy alliance in favor of absolute monarchy. The comparison is drawn from 1848, when you really did have the holy alliance of Austria, Prussia, and Russia that would and did intervene in each other's countries as requested to defend the cause of absolute monarchy. The Saudis are interested in absolute monarchy. King Abdullah has now made another round of large-scale money concessions, right? Large-scale largesse from King Abdullah. I think the thing you want to do in Saudi Arabia is keep talking about democracy and keep cashing in, because that's what he's offering, and it remains to be seen whether the U.S. and the British can mount any serious destabilization of Saudi Arabia. But in Bahrain, this was clear. This was the Khalifa family, the royal family of Bahrain, who had forbidden the U.S. to use that Fifth Fleet naval base for an attack on Iran, and that was their unpardonable sin. So therefore, they come under attack. Now, you want to bring down the Khalifa family, perhaps, or scare them to the point where they do what you want, or bring them down and get in a chaotic sort of democracy movement that can easily be controlled from the U.S. naval base. That remains to be seen. But the Gulf Cooperation Council is now the Holy Alliance, which is in some ways a problem for the U.S., because what do you do with them if they're determined to maintain absolute monarchy and you're interested in democracy? That sets up a conflict. Just this morning, we now have 40 or 50 people killed in Yemen, another country. This time, the U.S. plan, I think, to split it between the north, the reactionary or conservative north, and the more progressive south, the Aden area. And remember, in the north, you've got these Houthi rebels who are Shiites, can be used against Saudi Arabia, and so they're maybe getting some help from the Shiite side, from the Iranian side. So Yemen has now gone quite far down the line. Algeria, worth looking at. There was some more ferment this week in Algeria. The story in Algeria is a massive playing of the China card. This is something new that has to be added to that essay that I've mentioned, the essay published this week on tarpley.net. Algeria was reported to have 35 to 40,000 Chinese workers, and they're building all sorts of things: railroads, roads, hospitals, infrastructure, a huge series of projects set up by the Bouteflika government. And, of course, this is going to be paid for with oil money, Algeria being the other main oil producer, and therefore Bouteflika targeted. Why? Because he's playing the China card. And remember, the things that the imperialists care about in North Africa are essentially four: the Algerian oil, the Libyan oil, the Suez Canal, and the Nile, because that's the big water source, and water is now going to be increasingly important. In Egypt, the chaotic disappointment from the alleged revolution, right? In reality, the palace coup, the putsch behind the scenes that was carried out under the cover of this gaggle of people is now, I think, disappointing more and more people. People talk about the counter-revolution or a return of the police state. Perfectly possible. You need a program. You need an organization. We'll be back in a minute.